Let's look at Sunday. There are 10 games on. We're going to have a look at how we can win the week. Categories, points leagues, a little bit of a look into some schedule play as well. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I now go by the term Girly Pop. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Blue Sky, joshloyd.bsky.social, on Twitter at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Also, head to lockedondaily.com and sign up for your favorite team's newsletter. All the best info for your team delivered into your inbox 5 days a week. Go check that out. Also, we are here to talk about Sunday. Well, I did a week 19 preview show earlier today, so go and check that out if you haven't seen it already. Let's just get into talking about Sunday. It's a daily look ahead. It is Play Tennis Day, so if you want to get out there, just knock a few balls around, get some serves in, play a couple of sets, see how you go. That's what today is all about. For tomorrow, we have got 10 games and early starts. The first game starts at 1 p.m. Eastern. We've got a 3:30 p.m. Eastern game, which is actually a... What the hell time is this? It's okay, so it's a 3:30 p.m. Eastern, so it's a 12:30 p.m. Pacific because it's in Golden State? Well, whatever. That's a weird one. We've got a 5 p.m. game. We've got 4 6 p.m. Eastern games, 2 7 p.m. Eastern games, and then that late one, which is the Minnesota game against the Thunder, which is a 9:30 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, very, very spread out schedule of games. And that's okay. We're aware of it. We're ready to go. Let's take a look at some schedule stuff before we get into talking about the individual categories and points league streaming situations. There are 8 teams that have a back-to-back, Sunday into Monday. Now, Sunday's got 10 games on, so whether you can stream or not on Sunday, you're going to have a look at that. I don't know. You will be able to do it on Monday without any question. And I think for most of you, or a good chunk of you, you'll be able to do it on Sunday as well. But just take a look. Hawks, Pistons, Pacers, Clippers, Heat, Wolves, Thunder, and Wizards, they all play Sunday, and they all play Monday. That is, of course, what a back-to-back means. They're the 8 teams that play Sunday and Monday together. And get yourself a little bit of an early advantage heading into Monday, heading into week 19, heading into next week. In terms of some other scheduling stuff, if you want to go chunky, Sunday through to Thursday, all days are streamable. Sunday is the only iffy one with 10. You might be able to, you might not. Every other day is less than 9 or fewer than 9 games. I've got 6 names here that are all sitting under 30% rostered on Yahoo. We go with Cole Anthony, Jose Alvarado, yeah, I know he came off the bench. He still played 30 minutes. Royce O'Neale, by the way, the Suns today benched Tyus Jones. We've been talking about Tyus Jones being a drop for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and he's a very clear drop. Now I think they never made any sense to me why they were so insistent on Tyus Jones being on that team or playing that big role. It was crazy. And now they've made the move, and Bradley Beal is back starting, but O'Neale remains in the starting lineup too. So Royce is worth looking at for this chunky period of the time. Caris LeVert is there. Now, I don't like Wendell Carter Jr. as a must-roster player at all, but 3 games, 5 nights, Wendell, let's try it. And same with Chris Dunn over with the Clippers, who's on an unbelievable heater in terms of getting steals. He's getting assists, he gets rebounds, he gets blocks. He doesn't score at all, but he's getting a huge amount of steals. And with 3 games in 5 nights, nice little boost there. You're going to have some of these games that Kawhi is out, Ben Simmons is out. Kawhi might sit Sunday. Yeah, Simmons is definitely going to sit Monday, and extra opportunities there for Dunn, who I don't think is going to really sit any games. And if you look at 5s and 2s, there's one team that has a 5-game week. It's the Pistons, starting on Sunday through to the next Saturday. They have 5 games. Now, they only have 3 quality games because they play on a 10-game Sunday and a 10-game Friday, but that might be useful for you anyway. But 5 games, 7 nights for Detroit. Not sure there's much of a risk, although Cade has had a couple of little ankle and knee things at times where it gets a little bit, the burden that he has, it just does overwork him. So don't be shocked if you get one like Dennis Schroeder game in there because of a Cade rest scenario. Not saying it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be ruling that out at this point. Let's take a look at streaming now, and we'll start with points leagues. And again, because this All-Star break is a bit of a reset period for teams, but also for fantasy squads, I'm going to change a little bit in terms of the way that I'm presenting this, in terms of the guys that we put out there. Pre-break, when I was talking Yahoo Points League, I was just like, hey, who are my top 6 guys for fantasy points projections for the next day who are sitting at under 40% on Yahoo? All right, I'm not doing that anymore. What I'm doing is putting out 6 names still, but what I want to do is make sure that when we put them out there, I want to hit with at least two players who are under 30% rostered. So 30% is going to be my maximum number. So 2 under 30, I want to make sure I've got 1 under 20, 1 under 15, and 1 under 10 and 1 under 5. That's how I want to approach that as we move forward for looking at these streaming options on Yahoo. Sorry, let me rephrase that part. I want to make sure I get at least one player under 20, 1 under 10, 1 under 15. Yeah, that's how I want to do it. So that's what we're going to bring up. So again, enough talking. Let's bring it up, because we're sitting there with these top 4 names there. These all sit at under 30%, but Cole Anthony sits at under 15%. Right? He's at like 14% rostered. So he's with Jalen Suggs almost definitely out. I like Cole Anthony here in this spot. I like Jose Alvarado. I like Caris LeVert, and I like Wendell Carter Jr. All of those guys fit under my under 30% spot. And then if you want to get deeper into that, Moses Moody is under 10% rostered. And if you want to get even lower than that, to under 5% rostered, because I know you guys are out here. I know the double Onyxes are lurking. Vince Williams, who missed the last game the Grizzlies played, he will likely be back. Well, he's off the injury report, so he's ready to return. He's under 5% rostered. So we're covering all bases there. We've got 3 of them under 30, 1 under 20, 1 under 10, and 1 under 5. And again, that's sort of covering all bases. The order that I've got them in is the order of my projections for their fantasy points. But again, I think we cover enough bases there that for a lot of different leagues, we've got different options that we can talk about. The same goes for the ESPN list, but I don't use the ESPN roster percentages because they're just crazy. Like they make no sense at all. And I think the Yahoo roster percentage numbers at least correlate to activity levels over on ESPN as well. So that's what we're going to go with. And if we're talking about streaming in ESPN Points League players for the games on Sunday, it is still the top 3 names the same: Cole Anthony, Jose Alvarado, and Caris LeVert. All those guys sit in my under 30% zone. I've got an under 15, which is Cole Anthony. I've got Royce O'Neale on that list as well. I've got Moses Moody once more as an under 10% guy. And then Chris Dunn. He works better in an ESPN points format because of the extra boost they give to steals and blocks. But he looks pretty good in this position as well, especially considering we may not have Kawhi Leonard play in that game. So some significant options and some easy enough options to go and grab and use for Sunday. Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready, because if they swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player scores 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. Whenever the player scores 50, the very next day, starting at noon, midday, 12 p.m., during the NBA regular season, Dash Pass members will get 50% off an order up to $10 off the next day from noon through to midnight, 12 through to 12, whatever it is you're looking for. Some late night cravings, dinner, lunch, snacks, food, whatever it is. That's all food, isn't it? Anything you're looking for with Dash Pass, you can get it if that player scores 50 points. So sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50. From noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders of participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. Okay, so we've looked at some points streaming for Yahoo, some points streaming for ESPN. Let's now take a look at some category league streaming options, going through the major 8 categories. We'll start with points. As you'll note, and I know that for some reason, I don't know why Points League people always seem to push back against it. Well, Points League is not all about points. I know that, but the majority driving factor in scoring fantasy points is scoring real life points. That is the number one correlated thing. So the names that you see as the best Points League streamers are often the names that correlate to being the best category league streams for the points category. This is not a bad thing that fantasy points leagues skew towards scoring. It's just what it is. So the top names, now I'm using different roster percentage numbers for category leagues. I'm using our advanced metrics on Basketball Monster. I want to have 2 guys at most who fall under 65%. I want to have 2 guys who are under 45%. I want to have an under 20% guy and an under 10% guy to sort of cover the whole gamut. Again, these are in order of how I prioritize them. So Cole Anthony, he sits at under 45% roster, which I usually use as a default number for 12-team league rostering. And I think Cole sits on probably a decent chunk of waiver wires and some he'd be rostered in. But with Suggs out, he's been really good. He could get usurped at any point by Mr. Black, and he won't get used, and then Black would have one good game and Anthony will come back. But for now, Cole Anthony. Moses Moody, he's just available everywhere. He's under 10% rostered. He's someone who is with John Kuminga out again. Moody is getting opportunities, so I like that. Zach Ricochet has got a higher roster percentage than Cole Anthony, which is curious. They're not really giving him gigantic minutes, but in terms of scoring ability, I like him for Sunday. I've got the horse, Keldon Johnson, on there as well, who was ridiculously good in that last game. It is worth noting, I think he shot 82% to get there, and the game was a blowout very early on, so all the rotations are completely weird in that Spurs game, and that doesn't mean that Johnson's an ad. Obviously not. We know who Keldon Johnson is, but in terms of looking just for points, this is what he brings. Another sub 45% rostered guy is George Niang for the Hawks. They are starting Mohamed Waiver, and Niang doesn't really matter because Niang gets his 28, 29 minutes. He is a low upside player. And when we talked about week 19, a bit of a spoiler for that week, the Hawks are one of only 4 teams who play only 2 quality games. So while you can stream Niang in for this game and get some points out of him, moving off of him and streaming in to get 6 quality games would make a lot of sense for next week. Anyway, Niang's worth a look there. And then another 10%, under 10% guy is Corey Kispert for Washington, because they have, after bringing them back and starting them for one game, Chris Middleton, well, not Marcus Smart, but Middleton started, pushed Bub to the bench, craziness, and Marcus Smart played. Well, for Sunday, they're both out. They're resting. It is the first game of back-to-back, and how they're approaching this, I have no idea. So they're going to play the Wizards guys on Sunday, and then also they're going to sit them on Sunday and then bring them back to play Brooklyn? Okay. Whatever. So are we just going to have Bub just bouncing back and forward and back and forward? And usage back and forward between Bilal, who's actually questionable, so Sarr. That team is going to be so annoying rest of season. Anyway, Kispert, who I don't like as a rest of season must roster guy at all, but in terms of points and threes, he's always going to be in that TMC mix, the Matherin Collective, the group of guys where you go, oh, do I? And then you add him and you use him and then you move on and you get the next guy in. That's where I think Corey Kispert sits. You'll also note that there is a fairly tight correlation between getting points, getting fantasy points, and also getting 3-pointers. A lot of the names are similar. We're going to start in Phoenix, though. Royce O'Neale. He is rostered in a lot of spots, but it's still under 65%. Now, he is shaky. No, he's not shaky. He's streaky. That's a better term. He is very up and down in terms of consistency. But while he is starting, why wouldn't you? You'd have at least a crack at it, wouldn't you? And then the other options, some of the names I talked about already. Moses Moody. And then there is Buddy Hield, who was dreadful 2 games ago and was very good in the last game. And Kuminga is still out. Now, Hield is very hit or miss. He's not starting. I don't think he's going to start. But he could have 17 points. He could have 4. We know this about Bud. But the one thing he does is he takes threes. Don't always go in, but as a general rule, they can go in. And as we've detailed a million times, getting threes and streaming threes, the easiest category to do that with. You've also got George Niang, like I talked about already. And then Grayson Allen, another guy who still does sit under 65%, barely. But the value of him is like 13 points, 3 threes. You can use that. And then, again, Corey Kispert. A lot of the same names. We know these guys. We know the value. We know how we can get 3, 4, 5 threes out of these players sitting on the waiver wire, relatively comfortably. Not a huge challenge to do that. Now we start talking big men, rebounds. Who can we stream in to get those boards? And I'm going to go with 2 Orlando Magic centers, the starter and the backup. Both guys currently under 65% rostered. There is no reason in my mind for you to hold Goga Bitadze as a must-roster player in 12s, and there is no reason to add Wendell Carter as a must-roster for 12-team leagues. They are usable for certain specific things, but they are absolutely not guys that you'd lock in and hold. But for now, for Sunday, both sit under 65%. Wendell Carter, Goga Bitadze. One can get double digits. Goga might get 7 or 8 in his game. And at any point, Jamal Mosley could do a switcheroo. And Wendell could struggle, get into foul trouble. Goga could come in, play 27 minutes, have a big one. That's true. It's the unreliability of how their production looks, especially with Goga at the moment, that precludes them from being must-hold, must-roster players. Some other guys who are just available like everywhere. The Cockroach, Mason Plumlee, and Kevon Looney. They're like 2% rostered or something. Available in every spot. Now, it's not going to be for everybody. And I'm saying this while I don't know what happened in the Suns game on Saturday. Maybe Plumlee just didn't play at all. I've got no idea. But I think he's worth looking at. And then we go to San Antonio, where I don't know how to pass through the Biyombo, Bassi, Mamukelashvili situation, because they did something that just made absolutely no sense in the last game. Mamu plays 0 minutes, and then when extra centers come in, he plays 21 minutes. Sure, that makes no sense to me at all. So trying to predict what they're going to do as we move forward is very, very tough. But the one thing I do feel okay about is that Bassi's going to play most nights. Now, is it enough? I don't know, but I'll put him there as a guy to look at. And then this man, he's just getting a lot of touches. And you don't really associate Cole Anthony with being a rebound streamer, but I think he is. He can easily get 5 rebounds. He's a very good rebounder as a guard. And sometimes getting that random play where, hey, I need 3s and rebounds. How do I get them? Here we go. I need scoring and rebounds. Oh, here we are. Doesn't always happen that way. And Cole is one of those players who is able to do that relatively often. We've got more categories to come back and talk about, and we'll do that. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. When the game tips off, the NBA action, it's just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. On FanDuel, you can place live bets all throughout the game. So even if you miss the start, even if there's something happening in the fourth quarter, there's a comeback coming, or you think the team's going to hold them off, or you can place those live bets. Plus, you can increase the odds as well by combining some of those live bets into a same game parlay. It's so easy to take a look at if someone's going off, you think there's going to be a hot streak, or you could see a certain trend developing. That's where live betting comes in. Right now, new FanDuel customers can also get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just go to FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. Let's take a look at the final groupings of stats for category leagues. We'll go to assists, a very, very usually difficult category to find off the waiver wire, and it is relatively difficult here as well. But that name again, Cole Anthony, sits at the top. He's under 45% rostered. He is the starting point guard for now. It could switch at any point, but for now, we like that. Davion Mitchell in Miami. He's like around 30 minutes, 3 or 4 games in a row. And it does appear, the Heat beat reporters said this about a week ago. They said that Davion is looking like he's going to be part of just the starter for the foreseeable future. Now, it is, of course, the Heat, so that can change at any stage. But Davion's not going to score very much usually. But 5 assists, 2 steals? Maybe. And again, available everywhere. If you are in a shallower format, Andrew Nembhard might be sitting there. He's under 65%. Rightfully so. He's part of the TMC. He's one of those guys where you go, okay, he's 110th, maybe I'll hold on. Or do you get better value from just dropping and getting somebody else in? And in shallow leagues, the answer is obviously yes. So if Nembhard's there, then you can get those assists. And then we get into some deeper league ones. Now, I have no idea what the Pelicans are doing. None. Why you would start Kelly Olynyk in his first game, I have no idea. But they did. And if they start him and he plays 21 minutes, he could get 3 or 4 assists incredibly easily. And rostered nowhere. I wouldn't recommend looking at Kelly as a must-roster player at all. But as a nice little assist, random rebound, threes stream guy, sure. And then we go to Toronto, the man that replaced Davion Mitchell as the backup point guard, facilitating Mitchell to get traded, Jamal Shed, who is getting some minutes up there. We know that they're going to be very iffy with things moving back and forward all season, but Shed can get you those 4 or 5 assists as an upside play, which just isn't something that's all that easily attained. And then the last guy I want to talk about there is an under 45% rostered guy. It's Mike Conley, who is back. He only played 24 minutes in the last game. Maybe he only plays 24 here, but they are playing the Thunder. So don't be shocked if they push a little bit more in terms of extra minutes into someone like that. By the way, Rudy Gobert ruled out again. So is DiVincenzo, so is Randall. So all those guys are still out. So Conley, an opportunity to get 7, 8, 9 assists perhaps in that sort of a role. That's decent enough upside. He probably won't. He'll probably get 4. But there is an upside value there in Michael Conley. For steals, a lot of these names are going to be pretty obvious, and this is the second easiest category to stream in off the waiver wire. Chris Dunn by a million miles. He's available everywhere. Honestly, his roster percentage is so low, and I think it needs to be. I don't think he's a must, but the way he's playing, it's close enough. It's close enough. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and the Hong Kong mattress Carson Wallace, Alex Caruso, his teammate, all of those guys, easy 4 to 5 steal upside. Same with Chris Dunn, who's got probably those first 4 names. They are incredibly easy 4 to 5 steal upside players, 6 steal upside players, easily. After that does drop, that name again, Cole Anthony, he's there. And then that name again, amazingly, Kelly Olynyk. If they're playing him 20 minutes, he can get 1 or 2 steals. He's probably a better steals guy as a big man than a shot blocker. And he can get some steals too. But that's for those very, very deep formats. He's under 10% at the moment, which, again, I agree with. But when we're talking about individual streams coming in on this day, I think that makes a bit of sense. For blocks, it's got to be Goga. Even though he's playing like 18 minutes a night, already had 4 blocks in the last game, he's got 4 to 5 block upside. He's rostered still in a lot of different spots, but if he's available, you use him. Karlo Makovic only played 21 minutes last game because, again, they decided that it was better to try out what Kelly Olynyk can bring. But Makovic can still, in 21 minutes, get 2 blocks. It's not super high upside, and I wouldn't say that he's a must-roster player at all, but there's some nice block value there. Isaiah Stewart's one of those widely available players. I think he's at 8%, so he's a guy you can grab everywhere to get 2 blocks. Charlie Bassey, he's a 4 to 5 block upside guy. We just don't really have any idea how the Spurs are going to run these rotations. You could also throw Mamukelashvili into any of this mix as well. Does he play 0? Does he play 10? I don't know. Keyshawn George has been a pretty solid source of 1 to 2 blocks, and there is no Middleton, there is no Smart, so his minutes should stay 33-34 without really anyone challenging for that, at least on Sunday. And the last one's the cockroach, Mason Plumlee, who's not a good shot blocker at all, but maybe you get 1, maybe you get 2. The blocks are not as easy of a category to try and stream in. Field goal percentage, also not a particularly easy category to stream, but some of those names will do similar things in other categories. You've got Goga up the top there. You've got Goldfinger Charlie Bassey, Brandon Clark. Very interesting to see how limited Zach Edey gets against the Thunder team and how much Clark has to play extra. You've got Luke Cornett, Rashawn Holmes, who could start again because Alex Sarr is questionable, so just watch on Holmes. And that would mean that Tristan Vukcevic becomes an option also. And Timothy John McConnell, who's the rare guard, who's a high field goal percentage player. Lastly, we go to free throw percentage, which is a relatively easy streamable category these days. It didn't really used to be the case, but you can find some guys with 3-4 free throw attempt upside with 88%. You can. Mike Conley, the prestige penis himself, grade A dick, Grayson Allen, Milk, Ty Jerome, Corey Kispert, Luke Kennard. These guys, there's so many guys that fit all the different sort of roster percentage criteria that are just sitting on waiver wire who can do enough and can come in and have 3 for 3, 4 for 4, 6 for 6, 2 for 2, and have a bit of a swing onto your category. So that never used to be as easy of a thing to try and influence on the final day of a matchup. It feels like, that's a little anecdotally to me, but it does feel like this year it is a lot easier to be able to do that. And that is your nice little Sunday stream show. 10 games, early start, 1 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you're getting your lineups ready. Make sure you're getting your stream ideas ready. Make sure you're planning out the week to come as well. And one of the best ways you can plan out that week to come and do all the moves necessary during the week is by subscribing to this channel, audio or video, or both. That's what a double banger does. Hitting the thumb and leaving your comments down below, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.